Therefore, the sentence of death shall be imposed.
19-year-old Austin Myers to death.
To be sentenced to death, yes.
For a judge to sentence a teenager to death, the crime has to be unimaginably horrific. And trust me, these stories make even the toughest among us wince. When you hear about what these teens did, it's hard to argue against the punishment. The scale of their crimes is beyond belief. And for those who dodge the death penalty, well, their fates might make you rethink what lucky means. Take this one teen, for instance. He got 11 life sentences. This other kid is eligible for parole in March 2014. In this video, we'll look at some of the darkest stories of kids who faced the ultimate sentence in the courtroom. Austin Gregory Myers. 19-year-old Austin Gregory Myers was convicted of murdering Justin Back, a childhood friend. Myers and Timothy Mosley, his accomplice, planned to steal a safe from Justin's home. Their original plan to kill him with cold medicine failed when Myers' credit card was declined. They then decided to strangle Justin with a wire and make it look like he ran away with the safe. On the day of the murder, they bought cleaning supplies and gloves and then went to Justin's house. Mosley carried a wire and a knife, intending to strangle Justin while Myers distracted him. The wire slipped and Mosley panicked. While Myers held Justin down, Mosley stabbed him repeatedly. Justin begged for his life, but Myers told him it would be over soon. After killing Justin, they wrapped his body in a blanket, cleaned the scene, and stole the safe and other items, including a gun. They put Justin's body in the trunk of Mosley's car and later dumped it in a field in Preble County. Myers poured chemicals on the body and shot it twice with the stolen gun, which then jammed. The two were arrested soon after, and Justin's body was found the next day. An autopsy revealed he died from multiple stab wounds. In February 2014, Myers was charged with aggravated murder, robbery, burglary, and other serious crimes, including abusing a corpse and stealing a firearm. Some charges carried the possibility of the death penalty. Mosley, who was also charged, agreed to a plea deal a week before Myers' trial. In exchange for testifying against Myers, Mosley pled guilty to all charges and avoided the death penalty. Myers' trial began on September 22, 2014, and on October 2, 2014, the jury found him guilty on all charges. The two aggravated murder charges were combined, and the state pursued the one involving premeditation and robbery. During the penalty phase on October 6, 2014, Myers' family testified on his behalf, and he made a statement asking for leniency. Despite having no prior criminal record, the jury recommended the death penalty. On October 16, 2014, the court sentenced Myers to death and gave him additional prison terms for other crimes. The Ohio Supreme Court later upheld his conviction and sentence. Myers was sentenced to death and is currently on death row at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. Mosley, sentenced to life in prison on November 14, 2014, is held at Ross Correctional Institution, located across the street from Myers' prison in Chillicothe. Austin Gregory Myers' crimes were undeniably horrific, but brace yourself, the next kid's actions take things to a whole new level. Michael Bargo. Michael Shane Bargo Jr. was convicted of the brutal 2011 murder of 15-year-old Seth Jackson in Florida. At the time, Bargo was just 18 years old. Bargo and his girlfriend, Amber Wright, plotted to kill Wright's ex-boyfriend, Jackson. They lured him to a house owned by Charlie Ely, where Jackson was beaten, tortured, shot, and burned.
After being beaten and shot several times, Seth still managed to run outside where Kyle again made a choice to continue with the plan and bring Seth back inside, knowing he would not live.
Bargo and 4 others then burned Jackson's body in a fire pit, put the ashes in buckets, and dumped them in a quarry. Bargo was arrested, convicted, and given the death penalty. His 4 accomplices were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. During Bargo's resentencing, prosecutors described the crime as cold, calculated, and premeditated, and asked for the death penalty to be upheld.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Michael Shane Bargo Jr., should be sentenced to death, yes.
The defense argued that Bargo's troubled family background and mental health issues should result in a life sentence without parole instead. Bargo's mental health played a major role in his case. He had significant issues, including brain damage, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, seizures, hallucinations, and poor impulse control. He grew up in an abusive home, was abandoned by his father, and struggled with severe substance abuse, which worsened his condition. He was also misdiagnosed with ADHD ADHD as a child. Records show that Bargo's mental health problems started in childhood, not just after the crime. By his mid-teens, he was self-harming and diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2009, 2 years before the murder. Despite these factors, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, which the judge approved. Bargo remains on death row at Florida State Prison, with no execution date set. A petition is circulating to save Bargo's life, arguing that executing someone with a mental disability is wrong. It states that the death penalty doesn't bring real closure or justice and calls for reforms in how mental health is addressed in the legal system. Unlike Myers and Bargo, the next kid dodged the ultimate punishment. That doesn't mean what he got was any easier to bear. Jordan Wade. Jordan Wade was convicted of multiple serious crimes, including 4 counts of aggravated murder, attempted murder, burglary, robbery, and kidnapping. Wade, who was 16 at the time, was tried as an adult after a juvenile court judge transferred his case. He was arrested following a deadly incident at a home on East Houston Street. The victims were identified as Michael A. Ballore, Daniel Sharp, Angela D. Harrison, and Tiaja Nelson. Ballore lived in the home where the crime occurred, while the others did not. Police found a teenage girl injured outside the home, bleeding on the sidewalk. She told officers someone was dead inside. When police entered the house, they discovered 4 bodies. The young girl who survived the attack identified 28-year-old Robert L. Adams Jr. as the shooter. She said Adams and Wade robbed the victims in the kitchen before forcing them into the basement at gunpoint. She overheard Adams asking Wade if he should kill them all, to which Wade replied, yes. After the attackers left, the girl managed to stagger out of the house and found a passerby to help her. To protect her safety, prosecutors have asked that the survivor's name not be made public. Adams faced a death penalty indictment. However, Wade, who was a minor at the time, could not face the death penalty due to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. He received a total prison sentence of 172.5 years, with 4 consecutive 30-year-to-life sentences for the murders and additional time for other charges. In April 2019, Wade was resentenced to 172.5 years to life after the court reviewed his gang involvement and found that he actively encouraged Adams to commit the crimes. He is serving his sentence at Ross Correctional Institution, with his first parole hearing set for March 2144. Adams pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The next kid was the same age as Wade when he murdered an officer in cold blood. Jonathan Belton. Jonathan Belton was convicted for killing Oak Park police officer Mason Samborski in 2008. The incident happened after 16-year-old Belton was stopped for a traffic violation. Belton, who didn't have a license, lied about living with his sick mother at a nearby apartment complex. Officer Samborski drove him there, but Belton tried to escape. During the struggle that followed, Belton grabbed Samborski's gun and shot him in the head. Samborski later died at the hospital. Belton's lawyer argued it was an accident, claiming Samborski's hand slipped and caused the gun to fire. Prosecutors, however, said Belton had taken control of the gun and fired it intentionally. Because of the seriousness of the crime, Belton was tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder. He was initially sentenced to life without parole. However, his sentence was later reduced to 40 to 70 years, giving him the possibility of parole, but potentially still facing life in prison. Belton's sentence was reduced due to U.S. Supreme Court rulings in 2012 and 2016 that made life sentences without parole for juveniles unconstitutional. Judges now consider factors like the offender's age, mental development, family background, and home life when deciding on sentences. At the resentencing hearing, Sarah Samborski Batora, the widow of the victim, and Ken Samborski, the victim's father, shared their pain and anger. They urged the judge to keep Belton's original life sentence, saying he had destroyed their dreams and happiness. Belton also spoke, apologizing for his actions. He admitted there was no excuse for what he did, and shared that he had spent 13 years reflecting on his choices. He said that he never intended to kill Samborski. Judge Ray Lee Chabot acknowledged the difficulty of her decision. She reduced the sentence, citing Belton's youth and impulsiveness at the time of the crime, which she considered significant mitigating factors. The next kid is even younger than Wade when she committed some of the sickest crimes you will ever hear of. Carly Madison Gregg. 15-year-old Carly Madison Gregg from Brandon, Mississippi, was found guilty of killing her mother, trying to kill her stepfather, and tampering with evidence. The crimes happened on March 19, 2024, when she was 14. On that day, Carly used a .357 Magnum revolver to shoot her 40-year-old mother, Ashley Smiley, in her bedroom, firing 3 shots that killed her. Afterward, she sent a text from her mother's phone to her stepfather, Heath Smiley, asking when he would be home. Carly then invited a friend over, showed her the body, and told her she had more bullets for her stepfather. When Heath arrived, Carly shot him in the shoulder, but he managed to disarm her and call 911. Carly was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. She was tried as an adult and faced up to 2 life sentences. During the trial, her defense argued she was in a mental health crisis. A psychiatrist testified that Carly had been diagnosed with bipolar II disorder and struggled with depression and anxiety. Evidence from her journal and sketchbook suggested she was interested in dark and violent themes, pointing to possible aggression and instability. The defense argued that Carly's violent actions were influenced by starting Lexapro, a medication for anxiety and depression, just a week before the shootings. They said her mental health struggles and difficult upbringing contributed to the outburst. The prosecution disagreed, saying she was not insane during the crimes. They presented evidence showing she denied hearing voices, had no history of violence, and acted deliberately after the shootings. This included texting Heath, inviting a friend over, and tampering with evidence, proving she understood right from wrong. On September 20, 2024, the jury found Carly guilty on all charges and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. She also received 10 years for tampering with evidence, to be served at the same time as her life sentence. Carly's lawyers have filed for a new trial, claiming new evidence and media coverage before the trial made it unfair. They also criticized statements made by the prosecution during live-streamed hearings. The prosecution has asked the court to deny this request, saying the defense's claims lack legal basis. The next kid's crime was so disturbing, it's hard to believe anyone, let alone a minor, could do something so vile. Philip Chisholm. In 2013, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm, a student at Danvers High School in Massachusetts, committed a horrific crime. On October 22nd, he followed his algebra teacher, Colleen Ritzer, into a school bathroom where he strangled and stabbed her at least 16 times and raped her. Chisholm then hid her body in a recycling bin, wheeled it to the woods near the school, and assaulted her again with a tree branch. He also stole her underwear and credit cards. Chisholm was tried as an adult and found guilty of first-degree murder and armed robbery. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He also received a 40-year concurrent sentence for the other charges.
It is hereby ordered that you be committed to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21, and furthermore committed to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for the period of not less than 40 years.
Chisholm will be eligible for parole when he is 54. During the trial, his lawyers argued that Chisholm suffered from severe mental illness and was not fully responsible for his actions, claiming he experienced a psychotic episode and heard voices. A psychiatrist supported this claim. However, prosecutors argued that Chisholm knew what he was doing and understood it was wrong. In 2024, Chisholm admitted to attacking a 29-year-old female worker in 2014 while in custody for the murder of Colleen Ritzer. The attack happened in a Boston detention center where he followed the woman into a bathroom, tried to choke her, and shouted, "I'm gonna kill them all." For this, he was sentenced to 17 to 20 years in prison, to be served at the same time as his sentence for Ritzer's murder. Recently, Chisholm's lawyers asked the state's highest court to overturn his convictions and grant a new trial. They argue that his sentence is unconstitutional and that key evidence and witness testimony supporting his mental illness defense were unfairly excluded. Ritzer's family strongly opposes this, citing the severity of his crimes and his lack of remorse. When it comes to the worst crimes in recent history, the next kid's actions stand out as some of the most appalling. Peyton Gendron. On May 14, 2022, 18-year-old Peyton Gendron carried out a racist mass shooting at a Tops supermarket in Buffalo, New York, targeting black people. He killed 10 people and injured 3 others. Gendron, a self-proclaimed white supremacist, arrived around 2:30 p.m. with an AR-15-style rifle modified for high-capacity magazines. He wore body armor, a military helmet, and a camera to live-stream the attack on Twitch. In the parking lot, Gendron shot 4 people, killing 3. Inside the store, he shot 8 more people, killing 6. 2006. During the attack, he yelled racial slurs and spared a white person, apologizing and choosing not to shoot them. The 10 victims, all black, included Celestine Cheney, Roberta Drury, Andre McNeil, Catherine Massey, Margus Morrison, Hayward Patterson, Geraldine Talley, Ruth Whitfield, Pearl Young, and Aaron Salter Jr., a retired police officer who tried to stop Gendron. Gendron was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He first pleaded not guilty, but later admitted to all state charges, including murder, domestic terrorism, and hate crimes.
I'm very sorry. I did a terrible thing that day. I shot and killed people because they were black.
On February 15, 2023, he was sentenced to 11 life terms without parole.
It is the judgment of this court for your conviction under the first count of the indictment, a domestic act of terrorism motivated by hate in the first degree, an A1 felony, that you be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
Federal charges are still pending, and prosecutors plan to seek the death penalty. His federal trial is scheduled for September 8, 2025. Gendron's attack was labeled a hate crime and domestic terrorism driven by racism. He targeted black people to stop what he saw as a threat to the white race and hoped to inspire similar acts. The next kid's crimes were so outrageous that even the judge couldn't hold back. Reginald Lofton. In 2016, 14-year-old Reginald Lofton was convicted of felony murder for the robbery and shooting of pizza delivery driver Shane Varnador. On the night of March 1, 2016, Lofton and his friend, 21-year-old Jermaine Young, tricked Varnador into delivering a pizza to an apartment complex in Lawrenceville, Georgia. When Varnador arrived, he was shot and killed. Police found him lying in a parking spot with a gunshot wound to his upper left abdomen. Both Lofton and Young were charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. During Lofton's trial, prosecutors argued that Lofton was involved by providing the cell phone used to lure Varnador, witnessing part of the crime, and taking the pizza back to his apartment after the murder. Lofton claimed in his defense that, while he was in the apartment with Young on the night of the shooting, it was Young who planned and carried out the robbery. Lofton argued that, because of his young age, Young influenced him, and he backed out once he understood what Young intended to do. He was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. During his court hearing, Lofton initially stayed silent. However, before sentencing, he spoke briefly, saying,
"I did not kill someone, and I wasn't a shooter."
The judge, clearly frustrated, called Lofton a cold-blooded killer and said he wished he could impose a harsher punishment, though the law limited the sentence to life in prison.
I wish I could give you more time than I can, because I think you're a cold-blooded killer. I hope you never get out of jail.
Lofton appealed his conviction, saying the trial court made mistakes with evidence and that his lawyer didn't provide effective help during the trial. However, the Supreme Court of Georgia upheld the conviction. They ruled that there was enough evidence for a jury to reasonably find Lofton guilty of felony murder related to an armed robbery, the only thing keeping the next kid off death row is the possibility of an intellectual disability. Dexter Johnson. Dexter Johnson was convicted for a double murder in Harris County in 2006, just days after he turned 18. Johnson and 4 other teens carjacked Maria Apares and Huyen Ngo while they sat in a car outside Ngo's house. The group robbed them, took them to a secluded spot, and Johnson raped Apares before he and another teen shot and killed both victims. These murders were part of a 25-day crime spree by Johnson and his group, which also involved 3 other killings. Johnson has been on death row since his 2007 conviction.
Dexter Darnell Johnson. The jury has found you guilty of capital murder. In accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, this court hereby assesses your punishment of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to complete your jury service.
In his recent appeals, Johnson argues that he is intellectually disabled and therefore cannot be executed under U.S. Supreme Court rules. His lawyer points to updated IQ and neuropsychological tests showing his IQ falls below the intellectual disability threshold. The attorney also said that medical standards for determining intellectual disability have changed since Johnson's trial, warranting a review of his case. Harris County prosecutors argued against Johnson's claim of intellectual disability, pointing out that he brought up issues like brain injuries or mental illness during his trial. They also mentioned slightly higher IQ scores from that time and called him a man deserving of the ultimate punishment. Less than 24 hours before Johnson's scheduled execution, a federal appellate court stopped it. The court delayed the execution and sent the case back to a district court to review new claims about Johnson's intellectual disability. The district court will now investigate these claims further. At just 14 years old, the next kid murdered a classmate in cold blood and for no reason at all. Aidan Fucci. 14-year-old Aidan Fucci was convicted for murdering his 13-year-old schoolmate, Tristan Bailey. On Mother's Day in 2021, Fucci lured Bailey into the woods near her home and stabbed her 114 times. Her body was found hours after her family reported her missing. Before the murder, Fucci had told friends about his violent fantasies, including plans to drag someone into the woods and stab them. Initially charged with second-degree murder, his charge was upgraded to first-degree murder due to the crime's brutality. Friends revealed that Fucci often talked about violence, drew disturbing images, and even bragged about the killing while in jail. After his arrest on May 10, 2021, Fucci posted a selfie in the back of a patrol car with the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" Authorities discovered blood-stained clothes and a hunting knife, believed to be the murder weapon, in a pond near Aidan Fucci after he admitted to the crime. In February 2023, just before his trial, Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. In a handwritten letter read in court, he apologized to Tristan Bailey's family. Judge R. Lee Smith sentenced Fucci to life in prison, calling the crime heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and stating it had no motive.
Mr. Fucci, having entered a plea of guilty to the crime of first-degree murder, I adjudicate you guilty of the premeditated first-degree murder of Tristan Bailey. I sentence you to life in prison. Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years.
The judge said he killed Bailey for no reason.
What is also very troubling is that this crime had no motive. This was not done out of greed. It was not done in retaliation, retribution, or revenge. It was not a crime of passion.
Fucci's mother, Crystal Smith, was charged with tampering with evidence for washing blood off her son's jeans. She pleaded no contest and received 30 days in jail and 5 years of probation. Bailey's family called the murder devastating and said they never wanted Fucci released. They created the Tristan Bailey Memorial Foundation to honor her memory. If you enjoyed this video, click on the card showing on your screen right now for more videos.